This is Radio Health Journal. I'm Nancy Benson. This week, the inside story of wildlife crime prevention.
We have animals committing manslaughter, home invasion, breaking and entering, trespassing, jaywalking, vandalism. They're just animals being animals.
When nature breaks the law, when Radio Health Journal returns.
I'm Reed Pence, the producer and host of Radio Health Journal. If you like listening to Radio Health Journal, you'll also like our sister show, Viewpoints, which covers a wide array of topics from education to history to the environment. Here's a preview of what they're covering this week on Viewpoints.
Teaching is really a calling. Nobody ever said, I'm going to be a teacher and make a whole lot of money.
The mental toll of teaching. Then,
so often, people who need money the most are the ones that do the least desirable jobs, and they're the least desirable jobs because they're the dirtiest and most dangerous work.
The toll of being poor in the United States. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth this week on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
Listen to Radio Health Journal and Viewpoints on your favorite radio station, and subscribe and listen anytime on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Also, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Radio Health Journal.
Millions of otherwise normal Americans like to dress up for Halloween. Maybe you've just been to a Halloween party dressed as a gorilla, a tiger, or some other animal. But interactions between humans and real wild animals often don't go well. Even trying to catch the mouse in the kitchen can be frustrating, but our encounters with nature's creatures go downhill from there.
We have animals committing manslaughter, home invasion, breaking and entering, trespassing, jaywalking, vandalism. They're just animals being animals, trying to eat, trying to find a place to raise their young, etc. And sometimes they're doing that in our space and we get territorial and we want something to be done about it. And what do you do about it?
That's best-selling author Mary Roach, whose books have looked at the strange side of science, among them cadavers, ghosts, digestion, and packing a suitcase for Mars. Her latest is called Fuzz, When Nature Breaks the Law. She says it's all about wildlife crime prevention.
Human-wildlife conflict is the science that I zeroed in on, a science that I had never heard of before, and that is always bait for me. It's a realm of science that I was like, what? I've never heard of that. What's that about? So that's always appealing for me to step into some new world that I didn't know existed. And that is definitely the case here. I didn't realize there were people with titles like bear manager and human leopard conflict specialist.
Serious crimes like murder and manslaughter by wild animals are rare in the United States. Roach says bears kill only a couple of people a year on average. So many bear managers spend a lot of time trying to keep their charges out of dumpsters in mountain resort towns. Snakes and dogs are actually more lethal than bears, averaging about 15 fatal attacks in the U.S. each year. But in other parts of the world, wild animals are a much more serious threat to life and health. 500
people a year killed by elephants. They start to run out of food and they go into people's crops. And they raid their crops, and people obviously are upset. They've spent a tremendous amount of time and effort growing these crops. They depend on these crops, so they run out and try to scare the herd. The herd disperses, which makes them very anxious. They like to stay together in their group. So people get trampled. There's kind of mayhem, people running around, sometimes drunk. That's 36% of people killed by elephants have been drinking, sort of overestimating their ability to deal with an aggressive elephant. So that scenario doesn't end well.
Such fatal wild animal attacks are rare in the United States. That leaves authorities dealing with other lethal threats here, like falling trees. According to the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, more than 100 Americans a year are killed by falling trees, or what Roach found are officially called danger trees.
What that means is this is a tree, it's an old tree or a damaged tree, and it is looking like it might fall down. It's enough of a threat to people passing by that there needs to be some remediation, to cut off a limb or to take the tree down. And when it's one of those ancient, like those Douglas firs that are hundreds of years old, they die very slowly, but if you let it go and you don't keep an eye on it, you don't bring in your danger tree assessor, then you could have a situation, and this has happened up in McMillan Grove up in BC, where a storm comes along, the tree falls, hits in this case, it was a parked car with people in it, and they're killed. So you have to be very vigilant with your danger trees. And at a certain point, something needs to be done to make them safer. And that's when you call in your danger tree faller blaster.
A faller blaster is a lumberjack who sets off explosives to take off the top of a danger tree. Often that's enough to preserve the rest of the tree. But Roach says using explosives to deal with other natural nuisances hasn't always been as successful. For example, growers of sunflower seeds concentrated in the Dakotas have tried blasting the marauding blackbirds who eat their crop.
In the past, there were some pretty ghastly and not effective methods, which was basically kill as many as you can. And that turns out not to have effect even on the population, but certainly not on the amount of damage that you're seeing in that sector of agriculture. So it makes more sense to try to manipulate the environment. Know your enemy. Where do they roost? Okay, they like to roost in cattail marshes. So don't plant your crops near the cattail marsh, because that's obviously you're setting yourself up for some problems there. Is there a way to harvest earlier so that your crops aren't coming to readiness just as the birds are showing up? So that's been something the sunflower farmers have tried.
Explosives aren't the only attempted remedy that hasn't gone as planned. Bringing in foreign species to prey on nuisance animals is another one.
On paper, may have made sense, but it turns out that these chains of relationships are complicated, and sometimes those aren't thought through all the way. For example, bringing in mongoose to deal with the rats in the sugarcane fields in Hawaii. Well, the rats are nocturnal and the mongoose are dire, and also what happened is the mongoose instead went after some of the native species, and that's been an issue that happened in New Zealand as well. There's 3 invasive species have just taken off and are now destroying some of the native birds.
While Roach's book is mostly a lighthearted one about furry and feathered creatures, it's also a story about us. Many of the troublesome interactions people have with animals are a direct result of human habitat destruction or encroachment. Animals are merely trying to survive, and if we'd stay out of their way, they'd probably stay out of ours. Mary Roach's book, Fuzz, is available now. You can find out more about all our guests on our website, radiohealthjournal.org. Our studio producer is Jason Dickey. I'm Nancy Benson.
Radio Health Journal returns in just a moment.
Flu season is here, and flu is similar enough to COVID-19 to create dangerous confusion. SARS-CoV-2 can result in more serious illness, but initial symptoms are often similar. Fever and chills, a cough, runny nose, and shortness of breath. COVID-19 seems to spread more easily than flu, and people are often contagious longer. Dr. Manoj Gandhi, Senior Medical Director at Thermo Fisher Scientific, says, unfortunately, you can't tell the difference by symptoms alone.
Simultaneous testing for SARS-CoV-2 and influenza viruses is essential. Multiplex PCR technology allows for testing of multiple viruses and co-infections at the same time, which provides proper diagnosis, reduces transmission of COVID-19, monitors the spread of both COVID-19 and flu, and saves valuable testing resources.
Multi-pathogen PCR testing helps drive swift and accurate treatment decisions to help simultaneously manage flu season and the COVID-19 pandemic. Find out more at thermofisher.com/COVID-flu information. Cataracts are the #1 cause of vision loss in America and a common part of aging. Now, there is an opportunity for people with cataracts to enhance their vision thanks to innovative technologies in cataract replacement lenses. Acrosoft IQ Vivity is a first-of-its-kind lens, delivering high-quality 20/20 distance vision, excellent intermediate, and functional near vision. People who chose Vivity reported improved vision at various distances for activities such as watching their grandchildren play, working on a computer, and reading. 90% of patients with Vivity stated they are satisfied with their results and would get it again. To learn more about Vivity, visit mycataracts.com. Acrosoft IQ Vivity Extended Vision family of IOLs. Important product information. Description. The Acrosoft IQ Vivity Extended Vision IOL is a type of IOL used to focus images clearly onto the back of your eye or retina to allow clear vision after the cataract removal, providing clear distance vision, better intermediate, and some near vision compared to what a monofocal IOL would provide. There is a chance you may still need glasses for distance, intermediate, and/or near vision. Side effects include visual disturbances such as glare, rings around lights, starbursts, and a decrease in ability to distinguish objects from their background, especially in dim lighting. These side effects may make it more difficult to see in some situations. Contrast sensitivity, an important measure of visual function, is the ability to distinguish objects from their background, especially in dim lighting. In the Acrosoft IQ Vivity IOL clinical study, contrast sensitivity in dim lighting was reduced in patients who received the Acrosoft IQ Vivity IOL compared to those who received the monofocal IOL. Attention! As with any surgery, there are risks involved. Prior to surgery, ask your eye doctor to provide you with the patient information brochure for the proposed Acrosoft IQ Vivity Extended Vision IOL to be implanted. This document will further inform you of the risks and benefits associated with this IOL. Discuss any questions about possible risks and benefits with your eye doctor, as well as your medical condition and any eye disease you may have. For more information, visit mycataracts.com.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Viewpoints is a production of MediaTrax Communications. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more about upcoming shows and find a library of past programs on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and more information about our guests at viewpointsradio.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Viewpoints.
Coming up next week on Radio Health Journal.
There's so many different causes, them trying to sort of play this game of whack-a-mole to tamp down all of the different fires that are happening. It can feel a bit like they're trying to assemble an airplane in a firefight.
Preventing military suicides, how pressures are greater than ever.
Then the struggle for identity when twins lose their other half.
Often they feel like they're half of themselves. They don't know how to see themselves in life any longer. They don't know who they are.
All that and more on Radio Health Journal.